What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com, covering your Kansas City Chiefs. Tonight, I'm joined by my good friends Michael Darcy of KC Sports Support, Lucas Murphy, the Beat of KC, and we're going to talk Kansas City Chiefs pass rush in week 2 and what the plan is versus the Eagles. All that coming right after this. Ladies and gentlemen of the Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back in to another video on my channel. As I said in the intro, joined by my good friends Michael Darcy and Lucas Murphy tonight to talk more Kansas City Chiefs football. So, guys, the week 2 game coming pretty quickly as the Kansas City Chiefs take on the Philadelphia Eagles this weekend and look to avoid that 0-2 hole. Now, I think we can all agree that one of the keys to the Chiefs preventing from getting in that 0-2 hole is to improve on the things that were not very good in the first game. And I think the biggest thing that stood out from that first game, and we've already talked plenty about it, is the pass rush. The pass rush was not very good. I know, Michael, I don't know if you still have this information anymore or if you still have it off the top of your head, but there was a list that you were talking about in one of your videos of like the top.
Oh, yeah.
The top 10 or so players on the Kansas City Chiefs roster and what their pass rushing grades were. Do you happen to have that? Because that would be fantastic for this.
You know,
video.
I'll look for it right now, but I'll say this. You know, there were 3 guys in Mike Dana, Charles Omenihu, and Derek Nottie who combined for a 0% pass rush win rate against the Chargers, which is like, how on earth can you even have that? Okay, so here we go. I'm going to pull that up right here. It's between all of the spot track numbers I have on Tyreek Hill. This is the pass rush grades. Drew Tranquill had the highest grade, followed by Chamari Connor. Ashton Gelotti was the 3rd highest pass rush grade, and he was also the 1st defensive end, followed by Chris Jones at 4, Nick Bolton at 5, Marlon Tuipulotu was 6, Jack Cochran was 7th, George Karlaftis was 8th, and Jerry Tillery was 9th. So not a great list, but Gelotti was the best edge rusher according to PFF.
And Michael, that right there is exactly why I wanted you to read off that list, because the guy that I'm mainly wanting to talk about in this video is rookie defensive end Ashton Gelotti, who had the highest pass rush grade from that week 1 game versus the Chargers. I honestly think, you know, and this is something that Spags has struggled with, and that can be a point in this video that I'm sure one of you two might even have been planning to make, but Spags usually takes a while to fully hand things over to the young up-and-coming guy on the roster. He loves his veterans. We talked about that, how he falls in love with certain guys, but I think he seriously needs to consider giving Ashton Gelotti, the athletic rookie with a super high motor, more snaps in week 2 versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Lucas, since we haven't heard from you yet, I'm going to ask you first. What do you think of the possibility of giving Ashton Gelotti more snaps in week 2 to help this pass rush out?
I mean, I'm open for whatever allows this pass rush to get to the quarterback and create sacks. I mean, one of the biggest things that I've kind of talked about recently in videos is I like pressures. Don't get me wrong. I think that obviously puts the quarterback off balance and causes issues in the backfield. But if you're not sacking the quarterback, then are you really doing a whole lot of damage? And so to answer your question, I think Gelotti brings a different dynamic. He's younger. He's probably a little bit hungrier on that defensive line to kind of prove himself. I think there's a chance you could see more, and I think Spags is looking for that. What can we do to fix kind of what we saw in that first game? Like, how can we get to the quarterback? Are there different packages we can throw out there, different, ways to get to the quarterback? And I think it's interesting too, because I think they interviewed Charles Omenihu today and really kind of targeted that idea of getting to the quarterback. And he didn't seem too thrilled to answer questions because, well, that answers the whole reason why is because of what Darcy presented to us, the fact that he has a 0 grade. But to answer your question, I truly do believe that there's a much greater opportunity for Gelotti. I think there's a reason why they drafted him. They see that motor. They obviously compared him to George Karlaftis' motor. And if that is one positive Karlaftis has, is he does have a motor. And so I think that, yes, there is a lot better opportunity to see a little bit more from Gelotti.
Michael, what do you think?
I feel like when you look at the Chiefs' defensive end room, they really haven't invested in that position outside of paying. Well, that's not true. They haven't successfully addressed that room. They did extend George Karlaftis, who had the 8th highest pass rush grade. Most linebackers on the team had a better grade, but I digress. I feel like they haven't really invested a ton, and when they have, it hasn't worked out. You drafted Ashton Gelotti in the 3rd round. This is a guy that, let me go back and just read this because I think that it's important to mention when we talk about the pass rush grade. He had 5 pass rushing snaps. He got to the quarterback 4 of those times. He had an 80% rush win rate. Obviously, it's a small sample size. Put him back out on the field. Like, I understand he's raw. I understand that he's got some things he's got to work out and that he's a rookie. But goodness gracious, the upside's there. He had on one of his plays, I think I was watching Dan Harms of RGR Football was doing a film review. He hit the Chargers lineman with the craziest spin move and saw the tight end that was pulling and used inside leverage to get across him too. So this is a guy that you clearly have and has a lot of potential, and I want to see what he can do against the Eagles.
Yeah, so it takes me back to a conversation that we had during the 2021 season, because I think we're already seeing a lot of parallels between the way this defense is played, granted small sample size, and the way that defense is played. And it got to a point where we kept seeing the same slow athletes on the field, guys that clearly were past their expiration date. And we're like, Spags, all you need to do is live and die by having your best option on the field. Because here's the thing. If the Chiefs go out there this weekend against the Eagles and they lose and the defense looks bad, and it's with Mike Dana and Charles Omenihu and Derek Nottie on the field and combining for something crazy, like 60 snaps without a single pass rush win, then I think a lot of us will be upset. But if you go out there and you play Ashton Gelotti a bunch of snaps and you end up losing, I can live with that because you put your best guys, I think, that you have on the field, the guys that give you the best chance to get to the quarterback. What do you guys think? Disagree? Agree?
I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword in a way, because I obviously believe that Spags has his fit for guys. Like, we know his mold for what he expects his defensive ends to look like. We know his mold for how he likes clearly his linebackers to look and his corners and etc. But at the same time, like, Brett Veach is the one that's drafting. Brett Veach is the one that's going and getting these players. And I think obviously that's his expectation, is like, we've talked about it before, the grocery list. I don't think that the guys are like, hey, we really need this guy. We're looking for this style of player. And so I think some of it is both. Like, if we are not able to get to the quarterback and it continuously becomes an issue where we are game in, game out, just constantly not able to get to the quarterback, I think some accountability from that needs to be on Spags and Brett Veach, because this is the product they decided to put out there. And so I think, but really to become more positive, I think like this game is going to change. I do think Gelotti is going to get a lot more playing time. I think we're going to see a lot more versatility on this defense. If they can apply the pressure, I think then the secondary in return is able to apply pressure. And then I think the defense actually is what we expect it to be. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Michael.
Well, and that's the big question. Like, can you get enough from your pass rush to alleviate some of the pressure on the back end? Because one of the things the Chiefs did against the Chargers is they kind of had Trent McDuffie in and out of the slot. He was an all-pro in the slot. So I don't know why you're effing around and having him on the outside when you're going up against A.J. Brown. You're going up against Devontae Smith. Those are two big body wide receivers that are taller and I don't want to say more physical than Trent McDuffie, but that's a matchup nightmare. So you have to get to the quarterback. I think it starts with George Karlaftis. You just gave him, a lot of money in free agency to stay here. It starts with him, but outside of him, you got to go with the guys that you think have the most talent. And I don't care if they're a bit raw. I mean, Ashton Gelotti in a limited sample size gave you more pressure than Charles Omenihu, Mike Dana, and Derek Nottie. And I think, Lucas, you mentioned the mold that Spags has for players. That very same mold saw Mike Pennell get cut. Well, allegedly, that's what we think, and that's why he got cut. But he led all defensive tackles in run stopping in week 1, and Joshua Uche looked like a beast with the Eagles. And guess what? It's going to be so poetic to watch Josh Uche sack Patrick Mahomes, and Brett Veach is up in the suite just banging the table as hard as he can.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that happening and what the reaction is going to be. But no, so I think in an ideal world, you would want to have guys like Ashton Gelotti and Omar Norman-Lott play more of a reserve role and slowly bring them along. But I think, this is going to be a unique challenge for Steve Spagnuolo and the coaching staff, because I think you're in a situation where you're saying to yourself, we'd love to put these guys out there more, but we don't think they're quite ready yet. But then on the other side of things, I think giving them those snaps now and letting them work through those lumps is just going to make them more of an asset later in the season, when you really do need those guys to step up to show your depth that you supposedly built this offseason.
I guess my question is, and obviously this video is kind of centered around Gelotti, but at the same time, we're talking a little bit rookies. And I get Omar Norman-Lott kind of had an injury, but
yeah,
that's the whole intention of why we drafted him, was the fact that his win rate at Tennessee was one of the most insane things ever. And so if he's even come along a little bit and can provide that third down pressure, like, I'm wondering if that dynamic changes on this defensive front, and maybe we were just missing a little. And again, I'm not saying he's Chris Jones and he's going to be demanding triple teams and things like that, but like, there was a reason and with an intention to draft him for what we did. And so I'm wondering if he comes in on third downs, if like those third and longs that are converted maybe changes, because now we're able to kind of draw some attention off of Chris Jones, because Omar Norman-Lott's drawing some of that. And then it creates a little bit for Gelotti on the outside, or Charles Omenihu, or George Karlaftis, or any of those guys. And so I'm wondering if really kind of just bringing it together allows for more opportunity for guys like Gelotti to have a shining moment, because they were missing some pieces.
Well, I think ideally you want those guys to, because I think the biggest problem right now is Chris Jones goes out there, he gets double teamed and triple teamed, and no one else is a threat to get to the quarterback.
Right.
And hopefully, I think this is all what we're kind of hoping for, is that Ashton Gelotti and Omar Norman-Lott are guys with enough talent, even if they're not super refined right now, just, especially Gelotti too. I think, this description best fits him, but just that ball of energy that comes in the game fresh, and is just a handful for the offensive line to deal with. Guys that actually have raw ability to get after the quarterback when Chris Jones is eating up those double teams.
And I'm not trying to talk over Darcy, but I think one of the biggest things with Gelotti that I want to see, that we often see with George Karlaftis, is Karlaftis gets so wide that he gets completely taken out of the play. And then out of nowhere, he comes up from the backside because he got pushed so far out that it's almost like a coverage sack. I'm hoping Gelotti is a little bit different in that aspect. And I know we saw small sample sizes like we've talked about. I'm just hoping that Gelotti kind of doesn't have that same, like, go as wide as possible and then come out of nowhere. I'm hoping he has a little bit more dynamic to him, where he can, like, be more shifty, use his hands a little bit more, and then gets to the quarterback.
And I'll tell you what, something, and this might be completely pushing the panic button, so stop me if this sounds stupid. I was watching, again, that film review with Dan Harms, and he was kind of going over like one of the blitz snaps with Leo Chenal. Have Leo Chenal get to the, like, line him up as an edge rusher, and he might not win a lot, but he is so strong and athletic. He's going to push the pocket and maybe make it so someone else can get to the quarterback. Like, I like the idea of putting him out wide and see if he can get to the quarterback. Now, obviously, they can't do that consistently, but I think he's such a good athlete. Why not? But I do think I agree with both of you. Like, the Chiefs should absolutely give Gelotti more snaps. You need to find out what you have in him. It's very similar to our conversation about the running game. How do you know what you have in your backs if you give them 10 rush attempts? You don't know. You don't know what you got in either of those aspects.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think if you're trying to squeeze as much juice out of your pass rush, Michael, I don't think that's a terrible idea. Or like, trying to get as much, putting your best 4 guys out there when you're trying to rush with 4, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If you're having Chris Jones line up at edge, but you still want to keep that push in the middle, you could put, Omar Norman Lott out there, and hell, even Ashton Gelotti. Like, I think he has the size to play some of those snaps inside.
I guess my question to you guys, though, is do you think he knows who his best 4 are?
Now, that's a great question.
I think he knows who his 4 favorite are.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it.
Because going into this, we kind of saw like opportunities for the fact that they could really align this defensive front on. And I'm just using third down because typically that's when you're going all out. But there was an opportunity at one point, maybe even sticking Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Omar Norman Lott, and even like a Charles Omenihu, or in this case Gelotti. Like, to me, all of that right there screams like I'm getting after the quarterback. Like, if you were to say that was a consistent defensive front, I would be like, we probably got 2 sacks or 3 sacks that game easily. But it just seems like I don't know if he truly knows his best 4 guys or 5 guys that he can depend on to go out there and do what he needs to get done.
Well, the biggest issue is the only way the Chiefs got pressure on Friday is if they blitzed.
Right.
And I don't really know how sustainable that is long term. I'm not saying you can't blitz, but if that's the only way you can generate pressure, why the hell do you have a pass rush? Just blitz all the time. You know what I mean?
Or why'd you pay George Karlaftis?
That is the question. That is a question.
Yeah, and I think that's a question we'll probably be asking, still over the next month or so of the season as things develop. Because I think if we're still asking that same question a month from now, I think you kind of have your answer about this pass rush. You obviously want to see development from the younger guys, but you also want to see the 2 most expensive players on this defensive line. And really, I think the defense, because I think, George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, 2 highest paid players on defense right now, pending a Trent McDuffie extension, of course, if that happens. But yeah, you just need your guys to perform, really, at the end of the day.
I think, too, my biggest concern is this obviously is a Gelotti video, but what is George Karlaftis going to be without Chris Jones?
A pass rush 2?
Well, Michael and I were talking about that in the offseason when George got extended, and I think we both said, if Chris Jones gets hurt or something like that, or just, you're just in a situation without Chris Jones, you probably need to make a move for a number 1 pass rusher because it's not Karlaftis.
No.
Well, and I'm not trying to hijack this video. I tweeted out, I would have traded 3 firsts for Micah Parsons. That guy, did you see what that guy did tonight? Like that, man, could you imagine having just a true dominant edge rusher to go alongside Chris Jones? Or, Micah Parsons is legit, man.
Yeah, no, for sure he is. And this is going way off topic, but
yeah,
while we're on the top, no, because I'm going to continue. While we're on the topic of the Packers game, and people will probably click off the video at this point, but in fantasy, I have Brock Bowers and Tucker Kraft. And I was looking at that Brock Bowers injury report, and I'm like, I don't know if he's going to play. I'm just going to throw Tucker Kraft in there last minute. And man, was he awesome tonight.
Dude, you're throwing salt in the wound.
You have him?
I didn't start him. I'm rolling with Andrews because they're going against Cleveland, and Andrews kind of historically has good games against Cleveland. But there was this weird feeling. I'm like, I should be starting Tucker Kraft, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna ride. It was one of those moments where you're like, trust your gut, and then you don't, and then you're like looking back on it, you're like, gosh, dang.
It's always the move you don't make.
Yeah.
No, but I think
always gamble. It's always the one you don't gamble. That's what you never give up.
Yeah.
Call 1-800-GAMBLING.
Yeah. If you lose a bunch of money, you could always win it back with that one more try, right?
That's what I'm saying.
No, don't take gambling advice from me. But I think that's a good place to end it, guys. So definitely let us know down in the comments below whether or not you started Tucker Kraft in fantasy, and also what your thoughts are on the Kansas City Chiefs pass rush plan in week 2. But with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. You can check out my work on showmefootball.com. follow the Twitter, show me FB. And then before we go, where can the people find you guys? Michael, we'll start with you.
You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report, and go check out the podcast now on Spotify. And I'm still working on Apple, but so far we're trying to get on the streaming services. So go check that out.
For sure. Lucas?
Find me at the Beat of KC over on YouTube as well as Twitter. I've been posting a lot of kind of clips over there, so you can get brief cutouts of the episodes over at the Beat of KC on Twitter.
There you guys have it. All that will be in the description down below, as always. Also, shout out to our partners over at WW Energy. Can't forget, contains coffee fruit extract. Way better, way healthier for you than typical caffeinated energy drinks that are out on the market. And even better, you can get 10% off using my promo code down in the description below. Definitely check all that out. Like I said, everything will be down in the description below. That's all we got for this one. We'll see you all in the next one. And as always, go Chiefs.